I'm sure you heard that installing too many plugins in Jira is not a good idea. It's going to cause more bloat, more problems in your Jira environment, be harder to manage, make Jira slower, and so on. But is that actually true? We'll see if I'm even able to install that amount of Jira plugins or if I run into any particular limitations when doing so. And I'll do some benchmark tests before and after I install these plugins to see if it actually made any difference. And this definitely did make a difference in the old data center and server days when you had to host your own Jira environment, but I'm curious if it makes any difference in cloud. And since server is already gone and data center's on its way out, cloud is really the only one that matters. Now I'm going to be testing 4 primary benchmarks. I'm going to try using the most real world scenarios that a typical Jira user would come across when they are doing their daily work. So that's going to be loading of Kanban and list style views. Number 2 is how quickly work items open. Number 3 is status changes. And number 4 is field changes. And I want to see not only the technical differences before and after 100 apps, but also just the general loading speed of when I click on a new work item and how long everything takes to show up. It's kind of a pet peeve of mine to see plugin UIs showing up seconds after the work item loads. Makes it feel a lot slower and harder to use. So we'll see how much effect that actually has on opening up a work item and loading all of the UI elements. Let's run some benchmarks right now and see what we get. And just a side note, I'm going to be using the same exact environment for the before and after results. That way we know it's hosted in the exact same place. So no apps currently. If I click the app dropdown, I have no apps installed on this Jira environment. And I'm going to be using this design project as the guinea pig. So I have this plugin installed where I see the exact loading times of the pages when I refresh something or when I click something. So I'll open up a work item and we'll see what time we get. In this case, and I'll refresh just to make sure it's actually accurate. All right, so it looks like we have around 1.3 seconds for the loading of a work item, around 1.2 seconds to load the Kanban view, 1.2 seconds to load the list view. Now let's test out a status and field change. So I'll just move this to launch, and that took maybe a second or so to actually go through. And I'll test a quick priority change. The priority change was pretty much instant. I don't know that installing plugins will have any effect on status transitions and priority changes, but we'll have to wait and see. And once I install all of these apps, I'm going to make sure to show the benchmarks side by side, including the actual pages loading. That way we can see which one is faster and slower, if at all. So let's jump in and start installing our apps. All right, so that took quite some time, but we now have over 100 apps. I think we're at 103 installed in our Jira environment. And if I scroll through this list, it's just pretty crazy to see this amount of plugins in one single place. And let's go ahead and jump in and see if this makes any difference for our actual speed of the environment. Okay, so back in our design project, I'm going to pop open the same exact work item that I was looking at previously. And we'll see if it loads any slower. Okay, so we're at 1.6 seconds, which definitely did increase. Let me see if I pop up in another one. All right, let's see what this one is at. 1.6 again, all right. That's actually not that drastic of a difference. I was expecting quite a bit more delay when installing this many plugins, and especially when scrolling through and just seeing this crazy list of things that are showing up on my screen. So roughly 1.6, 1.6 and a half, almost 1.7 on some of these, which is definitely an increase, and I'll do a comparison of before and after in a moment. But let's go ahead and see how long the actual board view and the list views load next. Okay, 1.6 seconds once again. So it looks like it's almost universal. The delay is roughly half a second longer everywhere so far. Let's go to list view next. Okay, still 1.6 seconds, and I'll just do one more refresh, run this one more time just to make sure. Ooh, 2.3 seconds. Okay, let's go back to the board view and run a quick refresh. 1.2 seconds. Let's try that one more time. 1.6 seconds. So yeah, it looks like there's been roughly half a second of increase in delay for opening work items and opening the board view and the list view, which is not that drastic. That's actually fairly good in general. Let's go ahead and try a status transition to see if that changes anything at all. Seems to be just as fast as it was before. Let's try a priority change next. And just as I thought, pretty much no difference on the priority changes. Now, the biggest thing for me is seeing so much bloated things inside of this Jira ticket. And this obviously isn't a typical scenario, but one thing that I really don't like about app developers is them forcing these screens into certain sections. For example, tempo, I really don't like inside of this general main section. I prefer tempo on the right side as an openable tab. And I use tempo every day, so that's a bit of a pet peeve to see it. I have to use a boost in order to actually remove it it for me, but I know a lot of other app developers do the same thing, and I'm just not a huge fan. I'd rather have it in the sidebar and open it when and where I like, or at least have the option to show it or hide it from this general section in the middle. Now, one of the biggest things for me was to actually open up a work item and visually see how long these things take to populate. I'm assuming this will take quite a while, even though on the back end, technically the loading only takes roughly half a second more. I'm guessing that this will be considerably longer for all of these plugins to render their UI. So let's go ahead and open one and take a look. I'm going to refresh the page just to make sure there's no caching on the work item, and I'll open one up. And yeah, that does take quite a bit longer, particularly with these items inside the midsection right on the front of the screen. Let's go ahead and open up some of these items on the sidebar. Let's try making a couple of transitions on the board view, seeing if that has any impact. That has no impact whatsoever. Let's try creating something. That was almost instant as well. So in terms of usability of Jira, it looks like on cloud, we have almost no impact of installing 100 plugins. And obviously this is an absurd use case. I've never seen an environment get anywhere close to 100 plugins installed. On average, I maybe see between 5 and 15. Some enterprise organizations might have a little bit more, but for the most part, 6, 7, 8 plugins is pretty standard in most Jira environments. And seeing that installing 100 plugins has very little to no performance degradation in this Jira environment, I could pretty confidently say that you can install as many plugins as you like, and it won't impact your performance whatsoever. That being said, the question isn't can you install these plugins, it's should you install these plugins? And that brings me to the point that I mentioned earlier of a lot of these plugin developers are bloating your plugin with so much stuff that it's very, very hard to get any work done when you have too many installed. So that's problem number one. Problem number two is that they just get way harder to manage. It's harder to manage what you're using, what you're not using. It's harder to actually hide these if you don't need them, especially for certain or specific users. It costs more. So every plugin you download typically is going to cost more within your Jira environment. It's also much harder to maintain over time because you do have to sometimes update these apps manually, and going through and manually updating a list of 30, 40, 100 apps is obviously going to be very difficult. So it's definitely not something I would ever suggest doing. That being said, it technically is possible, and if you really, really wanted to, you can install 100 plugins today and have little to no performance hit in your Jira environment. And those three things are actually a big reason that we built Jira Power Tools. It's currently a rising star in the marketplace, and the whole goal and idea and concept of this app was to include functionality that would be available in 3 to 4, maybe 5 or 6 different apps that you currently use in a single app. A lot of these apps that I use and that I use with my clients are way overkill in terms of functionality and feature set than they actually need. And you end up paying a fortune, and it makes it harder to manage, your environment more bloated in terms of UI. So we built this app to essentially solve that. As checklist functionality, merging features, reminders, surfacing fields within your Jira portal, custom field finders, and a whole bunch more. So if you're interested in consolidating a lot of your tools, most teams that end up using this app are able to save several $1,000s per month on other apps that they could completely get rid of. So if you're interested in checking that out, find the Power Tools link down below and install it for yourself.